Dan Gibson claims that during the first Hijra century, all the mosques he studied were directed with remarkable accuracy, according to him, towards Petra, the capital of the Nabateans. And he found that the mosques which were built in the 3rd century till today all had their Qibla oriented towards Mecca. Based on his finding of the Qibla's direction and on his understanding from some narrations and some few selected verses from Al-Quran, he alleged that the true Muslim's Kaaba was in Petra, and that the present Kaaba, towards which Muslims pray and perform Hajj, is a Kaaba that was built by the companion Abdullah ibn Zubayr during the second fitna, meaning the second civil war. Dan Gibson said the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, lived in Petra, which was called Becca. After 13 years of preaching in Petra, he and his followers immigrated to Medina, which he say is the same Medina in Hijaz as we know it today. According to Dan Gibson, the early Islamic history as we know it from the writings of the early Muslim historians is true, except all events before around 73 after Hijrah. Whenever the history books mention Mecca, just substitute Mecca al-Hijaz with Petra, and these histories will become good. As of how Petra was replaced by the present Mecca is what Dan Gibson tells us in his video titled The Sacred City. Is Mecca really the birthplace of Islam? Specifically from minute 48 till minute 58 or 59. These historical events, as told by Dan Gibson, is what this study will examine. Dan Gibson uses as reference sources books written during the 9th century, 3rd Hijri century, by Muslim historians and scholars, namely to a great extent Al-Tabari history and Akhbar Mecca by Al-Azraqi. I will in this study use the same two books. I will also show a scan of the pages I am quoting from for Arabic-speaking viewers to see the original text which I translated to English. Now, most dates will be in Hijri years. The Hijri calendar started on the emigration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his companions from Mecca to Medina on the year 622 AD. So year 64 after Hijrah is 64 lunar years after 622 AD. Also, immigration in the Arabic language is Hijrah, so the calendar is called Hijri. AH means after Hijrah, after immigration. Before I go further with examining Dan Gibson's version of early Islamic history, I will present to you the historical facts as told by the Islamic sources, mainly Al-Tabari history, which is, in its general outline, accepted by most historians and scholars. I am using Al-Tabari because this is the book which Dan Gibson refers to and quote from. On the other hand, I must mention here, Dan Gibson's hypothesis was not presented nor examined by an academic authority. All the history books I refer to, when they mention Mecca, they are referring to Mecca, the one in Al-Hijaz, Saudi Arabia. In the Holy Quran, Mecca has two names, Mecca and Becca. The name Petra is not mentioned in the Quran and not mentioned by any historian or in any document relating to any early Islamic event. In order to provide the non-Muslim viewer with a general picture of what we are talking about, I will provide a very brief outline of the early history of Islam, starting from its birth. In the same time, I will examine the Petra hypothesis. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was born in the year 570 AD in Mecca al-Hijaz. In the year 610 AD, when he was 40 years old, he received the first revelation. During the following couple of years, Muhammad, peace be upon him, started to preach publicly that God is one. He condemned idols worship and the polytheism practiced by the Meccan. These are called al-Mushrikeen, meaning people who associate other deities with God. The Meccan Mushrikeen refused and opposed Muhammad's call. The Quran was revealed to Muhammad during the following 23 years in the form of verses and surahs. The first 13 years, the part which was revealed in Mecca before Hijrah, was mainly addressing al-Mushrikeen and denouncing their polytheism, beliefs and practices. The Meccan Quran provides a clear picture of a society, the majority of which are violently opposing the new religion, demanding it to include the names of their idols, Asnam. Now, if Mecca was Petra, as Dan Gibson wants us to believe, the first question which must be asked: what was Petra like during that period of early Islam? Do they fit the Quran description? Are they Mushrikeen, polytheist? The general view till recently indicated that Petra was not inhabited at that time. Encyclopedia Britannica tells us, after an earthquake, not the first, damaged the city in 551 AD, significant habitation seems to have ceased. End of quote. Not only Encyclopedia Britannica. Dan Gibson himself told us in 2002, and I quote, Dan Gibson said, according to my research, Petra was destroyed by an earthquake on July 9, year 551. In my book, The Nabateans, Builders of Petra, I wrote, on 9 July 551, a devastating earthquake reduced most of what remained of Petra to heaps of rubble. It was never rebuilt, and soon the bishops departed, and all records came to an end. The earthquake also destroyed many of the towns in the Negev. Many of these were never rebuilt. Dan Gibson, 2002. End. Yet, Dan Gibson published Quranic Geography in 2011, which claimed that Petra, not Mecca, was in 610 AD the birthplace of Islam. However, this opinion that Petra was never rebuilt after the 551 AD earthquake was changed when an archaeological mission discovered the papyrus scrolls in the ruins of a Byzantine church in Petra. The scrolls told us about life in Petra during the period between 537 AD till 593 AD. At that time, Petra was under the Byzantine and the Ghasasna rule. Both were Christians, and both did not permit idol worshipping, nor allow polytheism practices. The papyrus scrolls had been carbonized in the fire that destroyed the church early in the 7th century. From the surviving 100 scrolls and fragments of rolls, of which 20 were of several meters long, these documents recorded matters such as wills, dowries, accounts, tax receipts, divisions of estates, property boundaries, and loans. ACOR, the American Center of Oriental Research, who discovered and studied the papyrus, told us in their video and website, the scrolls as part of a 6th century archive of a family of Theodorus, son of Opodienos, who was deacon and then archdeacon, presumably in what we know today as the Petra Church, which the papyri tell us was dedicated to the Virgin of Mary. Essentially economic in nature, these documents refer to matters such as dowries, divisions of estate, property boundaries, and loans. On a larger historical scale, we learned that laws promulgated in Constantinople by the Emperor Justinian were put into effect in Petra virtually within the year. These everyday records have provided considerable insight into Petra and the wider region at this time. The written language of the scrolls is mostly Greek, and there are also a few lines of Latin. However, some personal names based on Arabic reflect the Nabatean ancestry of many individuals. These and many of the place names bear witness to the fact that numbers of the family who owned the archive communicated in an Arabic dialect. Akor's video tells us that the papyrus showed a Christian city following the Byzantine laws. There were several churches, Byzantine monastery, other public buildings, among them the house of the Saint High Priest Harun, outside the city of Petra. It was to serve the pilgrims who are visiting the burial place of Harun, the elder brother of the prophet Moses, which is on the top of Mount Harun, located 5 kilometers to the southwest of Petra. There was also a Byzantine army garrison in Sadaka nearby. Dr. Robert Sheck, archaeologist and historian, told us in Akon's lecture titled "The Religious Change in Southern Jordan in the Byzantine and Islamic Periods," published in December 2019, he said, Christians first appear in the early 4th century and grew in numbers, as the pagan largely disappeared by the early 5th century. The Christians formed the overwhelming majority of the population throughout the 5th, 6th, and early 7th centuries, and continued to thrive for a few generations after the Muslim conquest of the 630s. End of quotation. So, we can be confident that the city was inhabited, it was Christian, and following the laws of the Byzantines. The Byzantines strongly forbade idol worship and any form of polytheism, beliefs, and practices. If the Petra people were Christians and not polytheists, mushrikeen, that will not fit their description in the Holy Quran, revealed before Hijrah, because this part was addressed towards condemning polytheism. One will ask then GIBSON why the Quran was addressing al-mushrikeen when there were none in Petra. Also, if the Quran was revealed in Petra, why it did not mention the impressive buildings of Petra, which would have dwarfed Al-Kaaba, like the treasury, Al-Khazna, the tomb, which were carved out of the Rocky Mountains, the Byzantine church, and the big Roman theater that seats many more than 3,000 spectators? What about the water management system that supported 30,000 inhabitants? There is not even a hint about any of these. Yet the Holy Quran tells the Meccan people about the powerful Thamud people and how they carved their homes from the Rocky Mountains. In these verses revealed in Mecca, what would have been impressive about that if it was told to the Petra inhabitants, who already surrounded by large buildings all carved from the Rocky Mountains? As we know now, the Petra inhabitants in 610 AD were Christians. However, there was not one single word in the Quran about Zechariah, John the Baptist, Mary, or Jesus. For the first 5 years of its revelation, over 1/5 of the Quran was revealed without mentioning these important Christian names. Yet, in these 5 years, the Quran already told us about Ad, Thamud, Madian, and the Pharaohs. Also told us about many prophets, such as Idris, Noah, Hud, Salih, Ibrahim, Lut, Isaac, Ismail, Jacob, Joseph, Ayub, Shu'aib, Moses, Harun, Joshua bin Nun, Dhul-Kifl, David, Solomon, Elias, Yunus, but not Mary, nor Jesus. The surah named Mary was revealed after 5 years, nothing before. The name Al-Nasara, which refer to the religion of the followers of Jesus the Nazareth, the Christians, was mentioned for the first time in the Quran after the Muslims immigrated to Medina, after more than 13 years after the beginning of the revelation. Would the Quran ignore the religion of the Petra people if it was revealed in Petra? What about the burial place of the high priest Harun, being just outside Petra on top of a mountain called Mount Harun, and the pilgrims visiting the tomb and the building serving them? Would the Quran ignore all these and mainly addressed al-Mushrikeen for 13 years, when none of them was in Petra? There is more. In the year 614 AD, the Persian army invaded Jerusalem, the Levant, all the area around it, including Petra, came under the Persian occupation. The Quran was in its 4th year when they invaded, but nothing, not even a hint. Also, Al-Quran is addressing people who are, in their majority, do not read and write. Quran called the Christians and the Jews people of the book. Arab were mostly illiterate. They did not have a book. The longest verse in the Holy Quran ordered Muslims to write, record, and witness their loans. As we seen in the scrolls, Petra people used to write and witness their transactions and loans. Such long verse would not have been of any meaning to them. They already been doing that at least 100 years before the Quran verse. Also, Quran spoke about past events concerning Mecca, like the year of the elephant, which was about 570 AD. Yet it did not tell us about the Petra earthquake of 551 AD, nor about a pandemic which hit Petra just before the earthquake, nor about the Persian occupation in 614 AD, which lasted 15 years. That was from the Quran. Now, on the side of Petra itself, Petra was a metropolitan, well connected with the villages and cities around it, like Gaza, Jerusalem, Aqaba, Ila, and many others. There were priests, bishops, governors, a Byzantine garrison, and many others. How would all these people and authorities react to a new prophet appearing and preaching in their city? Not one word from any of these public and private parties about a new prophet with followers active and preaching in their city and in the provinces around it for 13 years. Not a word. But that was not all. The prophet and his followers left the city and went to Yathrib, but they engaged in many battles with Petra, till they defeated Petra itself and entered it in the year 630 AD. All this, as Dan Gibson tells us, but not a word in any of the history records that Petra was involved in several battles with a town called Yathrib in Al-Hijaz, and that it lost and was invaded in 630 AD. Where was the Byzantine garrison during all these battles? Where was the Gassasina? Where was the Mushrikeen? Where was the bishops, the Christians? Not one single word in any historical records, Muslims and not Muslims. Petra was metropolitan, Byzantine, full of churches, already Christianized, no Mushrikeen, no polytheism, no idols, no wars, no invasion, no conquest. Simply, Petra could not be the birthplace of Islam. That was just a start. The following episodes, we will examine Dan Gibson's story about Ibn Zubair, may Allah have mercy on his soul, and the moving of Al-Kaaba. Thank you for watching. Please share this video and subscribe to this channel. Wassalamu alaikum.